Mindset Mashup podcast, here we are. And if you're part of the Mashup family already, then welcome back. If you're new, then you know what to do. Press subscribe, leave a review, whatever platform you're watching or listening to. Just do something useful, do something that helps me out. This one's going to be a banger. I want to welcome a woman of many talents, many talents, to say the least. A mother of 4 kids, singer, songwriter, entrepreneur, TV host, the one and only Stacey Jackson. Welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. I'm super. It's a gorgeous day today in London. So, I mean, what could be bad?
Yeah, and we know we have to make the most out of the sun in in the UK, don't we?
Yes,
Because it can
yes, we
come quick and
do.
go quick.
Yes, we do. I totally appreciate every minute that there is sun and my doors are open, and I love it. I'm an outdoorsy person, so when it's sunny, I'm out the door.
Stacey, whereabouts in the US were you originally from?
Well, actually, I was born in Canada, but
Brought
I
up.
obviously yeah. So I was brought up in Montreal, and then I moved to New York. Lived there for 11 years, married a New Yorker, and then we moved to England many years ago. Actually, feels like yesterday, but it's been a long time since I've lived in the UK. Obviously, I'm bi-pond though, because
Yeah.
2 of my 4 kids live in the States, so I'm back and forth a lot.
Wow. So amongst the juggling all the other hats that I just said, you're also traveling traveling around a lot as well.
Yeah, I accrue a lot of points on my air miles.
uh, Stacey, I was looking forward to speaking with you because I know that amongst some of the things that you do, I know predominantly we talk about entrepreneurship on the podcast, and I think
Yeah.
the music industry in particular, I think probably requires a lot of the entrepreneurship skills that there is because you're creating a personal brand. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the entrepreneurial side of what it is to become a singer, to become a songwriter?
Wow, that is a massive question. I'm still going through it, to be honest. I've been doing this for many years. My biggest mistake was probably not really understanding how the business really worked from the beginning. Obviously, relying on management and relying on people who obviously did know their stuff. But over the years, I am a huge fan of really understanding the business that you're in, no matter what industry. Even if you're the creative part, you should at least have some knowledge about what you're getting yourself into. Someone who writes, records their own music as an independent artist, apparently, well, I mean, this is true. You could gain revenues 4 different ways. One is on your performance rights, obviously. So if you're singing, or if you're obviously singing in the track. Another way is if you wrote the track or co-wrote the track, you'll earn some revenue off of the publishing from that. The mechanical rights as well, and then the master copyright. So if I own the master copy to the records through my record label. So this it's tiny. We're talking pennies on every single count. So and you have to find the right collection agencies to go and find your revenue stream, because it doesn't just pop into your bank account. You have to find the right representation.
Mm.
There are companies out there that you need to know that you need to be registered correctly. That's another thing that I'm going to advise anybody in the industry or venturing into the industry, is to make sure that your stuff is registered, meaning that if you're putting it out there, you need to get an an ISRC code, so the all the data, anytime it gets any airplay, is registered correctly. That code is associated with who you are.
Mm.
You should register with the right agencies. So here there's PRS, which is your publishing, and there's PPL, which is your performance. So it depends. If you're in the United States, they have ASCAP, BMI. There are these companies that look out for artists specifically to try to find the revenues. It's very difficult. The internet has been my best friend and my enemy, with every artist. It's very difficult. But I think they've started to crack down. I think things are now easy because of the digital world. It's easier to tag. So as long as you're registered properly, you'll be able to see some revenue stream on that. But building a brand, like you said, is also important. Like, obviously, if you have a message in what you're saying, like in what you're singing in your songs, or in how you want to be perceived. For me, my songs did very, very well in the dance world, obviously, and dance and fitness are synonymous with each other. So I built a brand of fitness records. So there were 3 fitness albums I put out specifically to work out to, called Stay Pumped. And then I launched a brand of fitness wear called Stay Fit. And it's all, specifically for women, who have issues with being large busted and working out. So tying it all together and understanding your audience are very important. That said, those are very different audiences. So if you're talking about entrepreneurship, you have to, I thought that there'd be a great connection between the fitness and the dance world. And yes, music does tie that together. A lot of people go to the gym, they pop on their earphones and they work out. But the people that like dance music might not work out to it. The people that like dance music might not wear bras. So half of them might be men. For me as an entrepreneur, I really needed to learn a lot about who my audience was as I was building the brands. And, my husband thinks like I'm all over the place, because I'm a creative. So I like to create stuff. I love that, before I write a song, it didn't exist. I love that before I invented my bra top, it didn't exist. Before I wrote the book, it didn't exist. So for me, first and foremost, I'm a creative, but the business side of it, how do you commercialize your creativity is exhausting. It is exhausting. There's so much that somebody really needs to understand. Like, you have to learn the business inside and out, ask questions. Just because you're a creative doesn't mean, there's a really good saying, just because you know how to fix the toilet doesn't necessarily mean that you could run the plumbing company.
Yeah.
And
that's good.
So I'm learning every single day about the business, every day. And I think that's an important message to anyone who's venturing in any industry, that they really should know what they're getting themselves into, how to, who their market is, who they're talking to, learn from the mistakes, because God help me, I have made a lot of mistakes. But I would never grow if I didn't learn. I mean, this is, how life rolls, right?
And this is the thing, isn't it? I think we underestimate the importance of mistakes as people. And I think a lot of the mistakes we wouldn't, even if we could go back and change it, we probably wouldn't, because if we didn't make that mistake, we might have not have made the next best move that we did to get us to the point where that growing really starts happening.
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. I cannot tell you how important it is to make mistakes, because learning what doesn't work is just as important as learning what does work, because you'll never get to where you're going if you don't know, if you don't know how to do it, right? So I'm a big believer. And, so many people, like, they beat themselves up about failure and making mistakes, and they're so scared to take risks because they don't want to fail, or they don't want. But that's what life is about. How do you get to the next step if you don't take that risk, And my life has always been about taking those chances and seeing, when the door opens, what's on the other side. And even if you don't know, learn it. And you're never going to do it perfectly. I mean, look, we were just talking before we went on air about my daughter writing her GCSEs, I mean, she's petrified.
Yeah.
And I mean, life is going to be full of things that are going to scare the shit out of you. But you've got to take those risks, because you'll never be able to move forward in your life if you don't take those chances. That's my one big piece of advice.
No, I agree. And I can't help but sitting here, Stacey, thinking, do you think How do you think we convey that message as a society? Do you think that message is even said as a society, that take risks, like fail big, mistake as much as possible? Do you think that's spoken about enough?
No, 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 definitely not. Definitely not. But culture is interesting because obviously I've lived in three different countries,
Yeah.
and and Americans have a more raw, go get 'em
Yeah.
attitude. Here, this country is notorious. I mean, it's sort of changing, but that sort of the tallest poppy gets knocked down, right?
Mm,
They don't love to see success.
yeah.
So it's interesting because I am a transplant here. I'm more of the raw attitude. I always look at the glass half full. I'm a positive person. I believe that when something happens, it happens for a reason. What did I gain from this? Even if it didn't work, what did I learn, and
Yeah.
how could I do it differently? And maybe it might not even be the same thing, but how could I apply? How could I apply what I learned from my mistake? So there were many years I wasn't even seeing any revenue, and we're looking at all. I mean, I've had, I can't tell you how many hit records and spins, and the revenue wasn't sort of adding up, and I'm like, there's something not kosher here. And obviously it was only recently that I learned that I actually should be getting paid from different revenue streams, and I didn't realize. I just didn't know. I wasn't on top of the business side of things. And so I took the bull by the horns, and I finally said, wait, I am the only person in the world that actually gives a hoot about me. I mean, don't get me wrong. My husband loves me to bits. My kids love me to bits, but I am the only me I have. And if I want something to succeed, I have to be the one to
Yeah.
give the most shit about it. Pardon my swearing, but nobody's going to care as much about it or be as passionate about it than me. So how could I not learn about what the heck I'm getting myself into? So over the last few years, I've made it a like mandatory for me to learn about it. And I'm not saying I'm the best businesswoman on earth, but it's changed things. It's changed things now that I'm on top of things. I know the questions to ask, you know, um, because I'm never going to be an expert at this. There are people who have done this for many years, and all they do is run record labels or fitness brands or whatever. So my advice to people who are venturing into any industry is to ask questions, to go to people who have been veterans in the industry. Old people are fantastic. Go to old people. Don't think that they're relics. Actually, their experience is invaluable
Yeah.
because their mistakes will help you.
And I actually think we need to utilize that a lot more.
Mhm.
Almost go to retirement homes and actually just chat to people. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but the truth of it is that there can people seek information. And Stacey, I'm sure this is something that you will definitely, this will sit with you. I think we can do all the research we want until we've lived it, until we've experienced it. It's hard to even like apply that information because we have to contextualize it as people because that's what we like to do.
Mhm.
And when this sort of comes back to what we said earlier about sort of like that fear of not taking a risk and the fear of judgment, anything that stops us taking action, it doesn't matter what information you know, unless you take action, you're not going to actually learn the things that you need to learn to get you up to the next level. That's my belief anyway. What do you
Mhm.
reckon of that?
No, 100%. I mean, don't you remember being like a teenager and thinking like you knew it all? I mean, like I have a 15-year-old daughter at home, trust me. Like and I remember being a teenage girl and thinking, oh my God, my parents are so old. What do they know? They don't know anything. It's so true. And by the way, don't get me wrong, my kids are bright and they're doing their own thing and they're brilliant at what they're doing and they know their stuff. I that what they do, I don't know. And thank God, they're in technologies. That's their domain. And I'm sure they have mentors and they'll ask the right questions when they get stuck on something because we've taught them that.
Yeah.
But then again, when they were younger, I could say something until I was blue in the face trying to give them my experience and my advice, but I'm mummy and my kids are like, what do you know? You're my mom. And then, but then somebody else can tell them exactly the same thing that I was telling them, and they would listen
They'll be like,
because they weren't their parents.
yeah, there is like they'll be like, I wish mum told me that. You're like, I did tell you
I
that.
did. It's funny, but it's true. So I mean, I remember having loads of mentors growing up and being in the businesses that I was in, and I until this day I still have mentors, and I think it's very, very important to find that support from someone in the industry that you're in, whether it be music or it be tech or it be or anything, banking, whatever you do, just to have someone that you can be your sounding board, that you can trust, that you can ask questions and because then they'll turn around and say, you know what, actually, in 1979, I'll tell you, I know this is going to sound old, I was here and I did that and it didn't work because of this. And okay, maybe not all of it is relevant right now or today, but some of it will be.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh my God, you're right. Actually, I didn't think of that. And, unless you've actually experienced things, it's always good to ask questions because, like I said, it's really hard to move forward if you don't have a crystal ball, right?
And
So
it might lead to other things as well. It might get you on another thought path, which is more helpful. So, Stacey, tell us about your sort of businesses and your the things that you sort of go into.
Well, so obviously I've been singer-songwriter. I own my own record label.
Yeah.
And I'm a television presenter. So I host a television show called Stacey Jackson in the 80s. It's on Sky. Basically, I specialize in 80s music. But each week is a different theme. And I talk about, best rock bands in the 80s, the music's influence on fashion in the 80s, different, the British invasion, you name it, live performances. So I had so much fun, actually. It's a nostalgic TV show, and I absolutely love doing that. And
so how did that come about? Because that must have been big for you. Obviously, you spoke about sort of going through the challenges and raising kids and things like that. That must have been massive for you.
Massive for me to have landed that show. I that was a dream of mine.
Yeah.
I mean, I
It's
lived.
pretty cool. So cool.
Thank you. I lived in the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. I'm authentically an 80s girl. And a lot of my songs that I do have a bit of an 80s feel to it, even my original material. And my covers are of 80s songs. So I am stuck in the 80s. And I got called to audition for a nostalgic television network called Spotlight TV. And they basically do music shows from all the generations of music up until I think the 80s is the latest they go. And I auditioned, literally. I didn't think that I was going to get the role because I thought I might be a little too American Canadian. Maybe I was a little too blonde. I don't when you audition, they could just turn you down. And I got the job to the point where they actually used my screen test as the first episode. So I must have nailed it. And so yeah, I present every week, and it's been just a wonderful experience for me doing that. And I've got, in fact, the theme song of the show just hit #1 last month.
Oh wow! Well done! Congratulations.
Thank you. So that went to #1 on the digital radio airplay charts, which is unbelievable. Yeah. It's a global chart. So, that was pretty big for me. And yeah, I've got a fitness brand of clothes that you can grab on Amazon, but it's special. It's for women who have issues while they're working out because their boobs are getting in the way and get uncomfortable with certain bras to you get sort of sweat trapped in the wrong areas, and it's not a good look on anyone. So I came up with a top that was a full coverage top that had a built-in bra that didn't that was full, it's that basically supported you but didn't harm you, and you couldn't get sweat trapped. And So it's antibacterial, has all, hypoallergenic. It's wonderful. And I sold it on a Ideal Home Shopping channel a few times, and now it's available on Amazon. So yeah, it's I have my fingers in a lot of pies, as you said, but it all comes together as one brand. I suspect, it's all about health and well-being and moving and just doing what you love to do and basically living the dream. For me, my brand is about just never too late to do what you're always passionate about. You said I raised 4 kids, so I took about 15 years off to be my sole, caregiver to my kids. And so coming back into the music world, the business world, was daunting, petrifying, scary. But like you said, or we discussed, you got to take risks, because I didn't want to be 80. My kids already, I have grandkids, great grandkids, and I didn't want to be that grandma going, I could have been, I should have been. I wanted to do it. And I feel that, like, by doing these things that I love so much, I'm sending positive messages to my own children, not just to people who listen to your podcast, but hopefully to, like, to the world, that, like, it is never too late to live your dreams. Whatever you're passionate about, you should give it a go. People are so nervous. They get set in their ways. They don't know how to get things off the ground. They don't even know where to start. It brings it back to asking questions and finding the right mentors. And that's how you start,
And it's so accessible now. Like, mental is so accessible now. Like, just with social media, you can get advice. Even like forums like this. Like, there's plenty of other podcasts as well that people can listen to and get information like this. So
yeah.
Going back, so 15 years you're raising your family. You come back in. Then what? What happened after that? So you got back to it, and what
Yeah, well, it was
started
a bit,
happening?
so I was turning 40 and I had this, like, revelation going, oh my God, my kids are getting older. I was very young when I started. And I never got to do what I always wanted to do. I mean, my husband, was a primary breadwinner at the time. He managed to grow his career, and no, don't get me wrong, I would never do it differently. I mean, I had my beautiful kids and I raised them, and I was their mummy, and I'm still their mummy, and I would never in years. But now, I mean, I'm an artist. I'm in the music industry, and now I'm turning 40. I'm going, oh my God, I am an old lady. Nobody's going to look at me now. Like, how, and it's a very ageist industry, obviously. And how do you just become a pop star at 40? So I aligned myself with a charity called Music for Youth, which is a UK-based charity here in the UK. And I thought it would be a really interesting idea to learn alongside these kids together how to record an album. And I brought a bunch of kids in from all over the UK who this charity specializes in creating platforms for the youth in this country to basically give them a platform to perform. And I said to the guy that was running Music for Youth at the time, I was like, this is great, but what about the creation of music? Not just getting up in front of your peers and singing or dancing or playing instruments, but actually recording an album. Would anybody want that kind of experience? Anyways, they were like, that's brilliant, let's do it. So they all came into London. There was about 30 or 40 of them, and some of them were, and these were amazing, talented kids. Like, I had gone all over your country looking for these kinds of kids who had the ability to play unbelievable violins, guitars, drums, bass. I got choirs, and we sprinkled them throughout about 10 tracks on the album. And one DJ was associated with this charity, and he remixed one of the songs that I was lead singer on and the kids were performing on. And all of a sudden, we're sitting between Lady Gaga and the Scissor Sisters on the charts. And
Wow.
I started to get calls from producers, saying, your vocal really suits the genre of music. Should we do, would you be interested in writing an album with us? And I just, that was it. That was the next step for me. So I literally launched my career with kids. I mean, it was just an idea, and it was, I wouldn't say it was a fluke. I mean, obviously we had a lot of buzz around charity, so there was a reason for this. I didn't think that it was going to, seriously launch a career. But yeah, that's the history of how it all started.
But that's the beauty though, and I don't want to overlook that, because you started that, you were sort of saying, you were in your own head saying, oh, like, I'm 40, this is an ageist industry, but that you didn't let that narrative stop you going forward and going to do it. And I think that's such an important message, because look what's happened, because you decided not to listen to what your mind was trying to tell you. And imagine if you didn't do that. What would you have been saying now if you were like, oh, now I'm just going to forget all that. And because you didn't listen to it, you're here. And, I mean, sitting between Lady Gaga and the Scissor Sisters, that's massive. That's huge.
Yeah, that was massive. That
And
was. And then so from there, everything just kind of spiraled for me, and it just started to grow. So, it's a crazy journey I'm on, but I love every minute of it. And I love growing with it. I love learning about it. The industry is horrendous, the music industry, for so many reasons, but it's a part of who I am. It's part of me, and
yeah,
I'm fortunate. Yeah.
and I think curiosity is key, isn't it? Like you said questions quite a lot, and it's clear that you're a very curious person. And I think I spoke to a few people on this podcast now, and they've all said curiosity is so important to become successful, because otherwise you could just be looking with blinkers on, just looking in what's going on in your bubble, not seeing what else is out there and stuff. So I think that's really key, and that's something that I'm definitely a lot more aware of now when I look at things like, how am I looking at this? Is that potentially restricting me of other options? Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
and I've got to ask,
absolutely.
I've got to ask as well, because I know you've done a track with Snoop Dogg. Um,
Yes.
how did that come about?
So after I did this record, I wrote this original record called "Live It Up,"
Live it up, yeah.
and um, we launched the first single off it was called "I Am a Woman," and that did really well in the dance and club world. And um, I had written the title track of the album, which was called "Live It Up," and required a rapper on it. And at this point, I now had a couple of hit records under my belt, and I was being managed by an American guy who had done some work with some of the sort of gangster rappers back in the day, the Wu-Tang Clan and all that.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what, Stay, Snoop Dogg is gonna love you. I'm gonna send him the track. I'm like, Steven, really? You can get to Snoop Dogg? I mean, what are you smoking, right? And he's like, Stacey, I swear, let me just send it out. I'll send it to a bunch of guys and we'll see what they say. If they like the record, yeah, why not? And honestly, Snoop came back almost like within the week. Loved the track. I think I was already on the plane by the time I hung up the phone with my manager. I was like, okay, I'm there. And so yeah, I met with him over like a weekend in Boston, and I was very adamant about being there. I mean, this was, people were still, you could still send parts back and forth. I mean, we're going back 10 or 11 years, but it's not like today where you can work on Zoom call. Even with that, I find that very strange. For music, I think you need to be in the room. I'm a creative. I'm old
Definitely,
school.
yeah.
I need to be in the room where it happens. And so yeah, I needed to be there because it wasn't just about writing with Snoop Dogg. The juxtaposition of me and him, the two lives are hilarious. And but even more so is that we also had so much in common.
Yeah.
Our kids, same age kids. He's married his like high school sweetheart. Like we actually had very similar things talking about parenting, and I absolutely had the most wonderful experience. So the song, it wasn't just about writing the song together, it was understanding each other and he understanding what the meaning was behind that song. And for me, the song Live It Up was about my father who had died, came to me in a dream. And it was the first and last time I ever dreamt about my dad, by the way. And
Wow.
he said, this is your time. Now is your time to do what you've always wanted to do. So you have got to do that. So I wrote the song
Wow.
about this spiritual sort of encounter with my father in the dream. And he liked the story about it. He liked the story that here I am, I'd given up my career, my life for my family, and was still passionate about being in the music industry, that I was willing to give it a try, even later on in life. And he loved that story. So yeah, so we wrote the song. He wrote the rap about it. So it is a lot more meaningful than just sending the parts over and him going, yeah, I'll do an 8 or 16 bar rap, no problem. It was much more deep than that. And I'm so blessed that I had that opportunity.
Nah, that's great. And again, I think it just shows like your perseverance to almost like obedience to the dream as well of like being a singer, like actually becoming a pop star, because people often, when they don't see results or they're going through a tough time or taking time out like you did, that tends to like fade and dilute, but you just kept it alive. And I love that. And I think that's awesome. And Stacey, just as we wrap up, I know you got 2 songs coming out. And,
I do.
You got 2 songs coming out. When are they coming out? When will people be able to find it? Or is it
yeah, well, I have a whole album. Actually, it'll be an EP coming out this fall. So we're going to
nice?
release one of the singles this summer, because this particular record holds a very big place in my heart. It's called Urgent, and it's a Foreigner song from 1981. It was one of my favorite songs back when I was 12. And I sort of Staceyized it. It's a club banger. It's perfect to work out to, great to dance to, the kind of music you'll hear in clubs, especially this summer on the beaches. And I'm super excited for that to come out. That'll be out in a couple of weeks in July. And I also did a collaboration with a Greek pop star who reached out to me a while back. And I wrote the song actually in English and French. I'm singing in both languages. And he said, oh, by the way, the record's coming out. Obviously, it's his label that's dealing with that. And it happens to be coming out at the same time. So, hey, when it rains, it pours. So, yeah, I got a lot going on this summer, but it's all good. And I'm going to be performing at Pride in London, and I'll be performing, I think, up in Liverpool. Potentially, I've got my dates all set, but I'm not in town a lot this summer. I'm back and forth all over the place. So, yeah, it'll be fun.
And you're honestly inspirational, how you keep everything afloat all the time. And I know you got a book coming out as well next year. How Gangster Rapper made me a better mum. That you got that one coming out as well. Do you say that's next year? Do you say that's next year? That's coming?
I think we're gonna be releasing it around Mother's Day, so first quarter of 2023. I got a lot on my plate. Timing is everything, right? I'm a creative, so I don't want to dilute my brand and everything all coming out at once. It's like, oh, everyone's just. But you know what? I'll come back on your show again next year when the book comes out. We'll have a chat.
And we'll catch up. And Stacey, where can people find you? If they're not already following you, where can they find you?
StaceyJackson.com, or all of my social platforms is Staerox, Staerox. And or on Spotlight TV on Sky, channel 365 if you get Sky. FreeSat 500 every Mondays and Fridays. I'm everywhere. At least it feels to me that I'm everywhere.
Yeah, no, you definitely are. And Stacey, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on, listeners. If
No,
you're
it's
still
been fun.
still listening, go follow Stacey. Honestly, even though we're doing this virtually, I could just tell nothing but good vibes coming from Stacey. So make sure you go follow all the socials, keep up to date with her new songs, her TV show, and subscribe to the channel. If you're not following me, then go follow me on the socials. But for now, thank you and God bless. Let's go.